Good evening and welcome to Keeping Watch, a live stream series where we expose what's happening in Florida politics this week. I'm Natasha Sutherland, the Black Constituency Communications Director for the Florida Communications and Research Hub. And joining me today are State Senator Shevrin Jones from District 35 and Brandon Wolf, Press Secretary for Equality Florida. I'll kick it over to you guys to go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Hello, my name is Shevrin Jones, and I have the awesome privilege of serving Senate District 35, which is the south portion of Broward County and the north portion of Miami-Dade County. And I'm so happy to be on here with you today, Natasha, with my very good friend, Brandon Wolf. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Senator, and thanks, Natasha. Brandon Wolf, he, him pronouns. I am based in Orlando, but I'm beaming into you from very chilly Tallahassee, Florida, where we've been on the ground fighting bills like the Stop Woke Act and the Don't Say Gay bill all day. We've been here for weeks, it feels, and really grateful to be on staff at Equality Florida. I'm actually Equality Florida's first full-time press secretary. I'm 5 weeks into that job, and yeah, it's been a ride, but we're doing the good work. So grateful to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Well, I just want to say I'm super excited to have you both here. It's just great to have you. So thank you so much for joining me. So one of the things that I want to make sure that we let our listeners and our viewers know is that you can ask questions, but we will be answering them at the end of this live stream. So feel free if you want to during that time to drop them into the comment section. Okay. All right. Are y'all ready to get started?
Let's do it.
Okay. Awesome. So first things first, legislative session. Okay. Legislative session can feel confusing and overwhelming, especially if you're not familiar with the process or the terminology. And, it can be a lot for everyday Floridians. So before we talk about the Don't Say Gay bill, the bill of this week, can you briefly explain to our viewers what legislative session is? How does it impact everyday Floridians? And has anything felt different about this year for you?
So the legislative session is when the legislators from across the state of Florida, we come together to one, do our one constitutional duty, and that is to pass a balanced budget. And that is our one constitutional duty. But along in that same time, it is also when we come together to deal with the affairs of the state of Florida. That includes from economic development, that includes from bringing money home to your district, but it also includes certain parties putting out their ideologies and putting out policies that we must live in and live by here within the state of Florida. From education to statewide tax policies, this is where a lot of the decisions that impact everyday Floridians are made within those 60 days. And every state do it differently.
I appreciate that. And I just wanted to drill down on the how does it impact Floridians, right? So I think it's worth saying out loud that Florida's legislature, although we're the third largest economy in the country, we have a very short amount of time that bills are actually made into law in the state of Florida. And one of the frustrating things about bills like the Don't Say Gay bill, the Stop Woke Act, the 15-week abortion ban, all of the sort of things that we're watching be pushed by Republican leadership in the legislature is that they don't actually address the real problems of Floridians. And when you only have 8 weeks with which to get stuff done, it's maddening for Floridians to watch as seemingly the legislature focuses on things that are not urgent, not crises, not important, and are instead more focused on potentially building campaign rhetoric for their own political ambitions. So in terms of what are the impacts on Floridians, it has legislative session has the real opportunity to make life better for Floridians. That's its purpose. That's the job of legislators, to go up to Tallahassee and work for their 60 days. Unfortunately, it doesn't always look like that, especially when those in power are more focused on where they're headed instead of how their constituents are faring.
Yeah, I think it's very troubling when you see that, because I mean, this is the one opportunity that we have to get things done in our state, right? To do the business of the people, if you will. So yeah, I mean, we want to talk about, right, the Don't Say Gay bill, and it's moving through session right now. Senator Jones, could you tell us a little bit more about what that bill is? This Don't Say Gay bill. I mean, a lot of folks may not have heard about it. I did see it kind of get some national coverage, however, so maybe they have. And do you expect it to advance in the legislature?
Well, let me start from the bottom and then I'll work my way up. Do I expect it to advance? I've been here for 11 years in Tallahassee. And I know the House is fast pacing this legislation. I can tell you that right now there's a bit of a stall on the bill over in the Senate, and I hope it stalls for the rest of the legislative session. But as of right now, it looks like it will pass. The main portion of the bill that I want us to hone in on is what makes mention that says a school district may not encourage classroom discussion about sexual orientation. That is the part that is probably most egregious, because in its vagueness, when you're saying that a school district they cannot encourage the conversation about sexual orientation, my number one question is: does that mean heterosexual couples cannot, heterosexual individuals cannot have this discussion also? That is the main portion of the bill. But another portion of it is the cause of action, which gives parents the ability that if their child is offended or feel uncomfortable, it gives the parents the opportunity to be able to sue the school district. That is the portion that not only gives all of us angst beyond the entire bill, but it also gives some Republican in the Senate some angst, because they feel that one is going to cause for a ton of lawsuits to start flying within the state of Florida. But then on the surface, the question is, why are we doing this? Considering the fact we just passed a bill last year that was called the Parental Rights Bill, that is doing everything that this bill is already saying, but yet and still this year they come and say they want to add sexual orientation to it. But mind you, so all of these parents' rights that they are calling this is already protected under the U.S. Constitution and under the Florida Constitution.
Wow. I mean, I find it just interesting that there is a pattern of legislating feelings, it seems like. So yeah, it's something that people really need to be paying attention to, right? And so moving forward to the next piece, why specifically this bill? Why should Floridians be paying attention to this bill, and how will it affect them if it were to pass and become law?
Well, I appreciate the question. And I'm sorry, Senator, you can plug your ears if you don't want to hear my campaign rhetoric right now. But I think it's important to name for people watching where the bill even comes from. Why are we even having this conversation? Because it can feel a bit out of control, right? Rent. I live in Orlando. I live in Central Florida. Rent went up 29% in my city last year. The last thing that I want the legislature talking about is whether or not they can affirm LGBTQ families in the classroom. So the question becomes where does it come from, and how did it end up in the Florida legislature being fast-tracked? In order to understand that, I think it's important to name out loud that Governor Ron DeSantis is really enamored with the idea of being president someday. Somebody told him somewhere in a smoky room that he was the next up-and-comer in the Republican Party, and he got high on his own supply, and now here we are today. He is convinced that he is the standard bearer for the Republican Party moving forward. In order to achieve that, he has to outflank Donald Trump to the right. He's got to shore up those base voters ahead of his reelection in 2022 and on to 2024. And so he and his allies in the legislature go to these poll-tested culture war issues to figure out how to drum up support, how to light things on fire ahead of re-election cycles so they can build this on-ramp toward 2024. Enter this slate of legislation that we're being force-fed right now. And it's not just about the Don't Say Gay bill. It's important to note that it's a whole litany of things that are moving through the legislature that have absolutely nothing to do with what Floridians actually want the legislature to be working on, right? It's Don't Say Gay. It's the Stop Woke Act that would censor conversations about racism and discrimination in classrooms. It's the 15-week abortion ban that gives the state government license to police people's bodies. We're talking about a license to discriminate in healthcare bill that would allow health insurance companies to deny people care if they just claim an ethical or moral objection to that care. So it's a whole slate of bills that are not designed to solve problems. They're designed to stir up culture wars to help people win elections and climb the next rung of the political ladder. The question you ask that's really important is, well, what are the impacts on people, right? These may be cynical political games by people like Governor Ron DeSantis, but they have real impacts on real people. The impacts of the Don't Say Gay bill rest squarely on the most marginalized people in our communities. I know what it felt like to be a queer person growing up in an environment that wasn't affirming of me. I know what it feels like to be a queer Black kid sitting in your desk thinking you're the only person like you in the world. I know how isolating that is. I know how it saved my life that I had teachers and counselors who opened their doors to me, who told me that I could be all of myself when I was inside those four walls. I know what that means to LGBTQ kids across the state of Florida. Those are the kids that are at risk right now. If we erase LGBTQ people from the classroom, we are erasing LGBTQ parents who no longer can feel welcome on career day or during show and tell presentations. We're erasing LGBTQ educators who might fear that using their pronouns in the classroom, their correct pronouns, being respected for who they are, might spark a lawsuit from an angry parent. And we are placing all of that burden on LGBTQ young people who are already 4 times as likely as their peers to attempt suicide by the time they graduate high school. These are real people. These are real Floridians who deserve our affirmation. They deserve our recognition. They deserve to be celebrated alongside everyone else. And unfortunately, they'll be the ones to pay the price for these runaway political ambitions by Governor Ron DeSantis and others. Now I'm getting off my soapbox.
Senator, did you have anything to add to that?
The one thing I've learned, do not follow Brandon after he has given his explanation. But I will say this. That the one thing to piggyback off of the statistic that came from the Trevor Project that speaks about youth who are 4 times more likely to commit suicide, just because it's not because of their sexual orientation, it's because of how they're treated. And it's true, even especially myself, who was raised in a conservative household with a mother and father who made it clear that homosexuality was wrong. And I didn't have anyone to speak to. So that's why I lived my life in this lie, because I didn't know who I can express myself to. It wasn't until my adult years that I was able to, because I had access to someone who I could speak to. I wish that when I was younger, there was a teacher who I could have just paused and spoken to about this. Am I weird for feeling this way? Is it okay for me to feel this way? I believe those are questions that children should be able to ask teachers, because there were times that I trusted my teacher more than I trusted my parent in certain situations. And as a former teacher, till this day, I know, and I'll take it to my grave, there were things that students shared with me that they would never share with their parents. And so this is going to put teachers in a very tough position. And I know people are like, oh, we're talking about school-age children. Have you read the bill? The bill just doesn't speak as far as when we talk about school-age children. It is so vague that it even puts censors possibly on like the gay straight alliance. What do teachers of those sponsors for those type of clubs, what type of position does it put them in? And so it's far greater than us just looking at the words that's on the paper. It's the words that's not on the paper. It is how the intent of the bill is written. That's the problem.
And you've given us so much to think about. I mean, I can't help but think about, family, friends, neighbors, colleagues that are going to be affected by this if it becomes law. And it really does sound like it's going to take away the opportunity. There's that saying, it takes a village to raise a child, right? And so it's important that, our young people have somebody in their life that they can go to and talk to and feel welcome. And wow, this is a significant thing that we need to be looking at. Well, thank you both for explaining that. And, I'm thinking about the folks that are watching right now that, maybe feel a particular way about this bill or some of the other bills that are moving in session. So what can Floridians who aren't in Tallahassee do to speak up against this harmful Republican bill?
Yeah, you go ahead, Brenda.
Well, thank you. There's a lot of actions that people can take. First and foremost, lawmakers need to hear from you. specifically if they are your lawmaker, they need to hear from you, and they need to hear from you now. I need to stress the urgency of what we're talking about. We have a very short amount of time before legislative session is over, before they ring the bell and lawmakers come back home. That means that the bills that are in the tank right now, like the Don't Say Gay bill, are flying through the legislature. We just learned that on Thursday at 3 o'clock Eastern time, the Don't Say Gay bill will be in its final House committee. That's it. And then it heads to the House floor. We know that it's got, I think, 2 more Senate committees could pop up in those agendas at any moment. So we need people to understand that the urgency is right now to have your voices heard. Call your lawmaker, email your lawmaker, let them know how you're feeling about the bills. Even if you don't think they're listening, it's time. Figure out who is the chair of the next committee and email that person and call that person. Call the Speaker of the House. Call the Senate president. Call the governor's office. These folks need to hear from you throughout the process. It drives me crazy when we just lean on the voting part of democracy. Voting is such a critical part of our democracy. Everyone should be exercising their right to vote, and we should be securing the right to vote. But it's not the beginning and the end of the democratic process. We have to continue to hold people accountable. We have to continue to show up and have our voices heard. We have to tell them what we want them to do. We have to continue to share with them why constituent issues are more important than donor issues. When we're talking about corporate donors coming in and spending boatloads of money to get people elected for special interests, the democratic process requires us to be engaged all the time. So I'm urging people, please reach out. Please talk to your lawmakers. You can check us out at Equality Florida. We're doing a lot of this work. We've got cable ads up in Tallahassee that are running on CNN, MSNBC, and Fox all this week. I just shared that we just raised enough money to keep them on next week as well. So we're really looking forward to that. You can share those ads online, donate to organizations, show up to protests if you can. You can go to freetosaygay.org. That's freetosaygay.org. And you can check out all of the work that we're doing at Equality Florida. But ultimately, my ask is just stay involved. The democratic process needs you more than just one day a year on a Tuesday after work. It needs you right now. It needs you urgently. It needs you to show up in whatever way makes the most sense for you.
And if I could add one thing on the whole portion of, as you write and call your elected officials, hold them accountable for what they're not saying, and that is for that Democrat or Republican. Ask them what their position is on some of these situations. A lot of times, people fly under the radar based off the people who are speaking the loudest, and yet still they know that they don't agree with it. And so call those individuals out, ask them the right question. And as an elected official, I want to be held accountable on things that I'm silent on. This is one of the things that we just can't be silent on, whether it is talking about the 15-week abortion ban, whether it is talking about the Stop the Woke Act, whether it is talking about the Don't Say Gay bill. All of these require conversations with the people who have to push that red or green button. And Brandon, as someone who is not only on the advocacy part, but I know him as a citizen. Even when he wasn't in that role, he was showing up to these type of things. His voice was needed, not just for the people who you're speaking out against, but individuals who you are on the side of. Because I can tell you how many times in the debate process, on committee, that I listen to talking points for individuals who are in the advocacy realm, and I pull that as reference. So that's why voices are needed. That's why emails are needed, because it's not annoying to me. I like reading them because I pull from it in debate, and I can be able to share that this is what actual people are saying, because the fight that we're having is not even coming from children. And can I tell y'all this real quick? Yesterday, I had the opportunity to speak at Ransom Everglades, and one of the questions that came from a child, I mean, she's under 18, so she was in high school, but from a child, asked, why are you all trying to ban us from teaching the truth about Black history and trying to silence the LGBTQ community? And she got an applause from the entire auditorium. It allowed me to realize that this fight is not the children fighting this fight. It's parents who are fighting this fight. And trust me, kids are watching.
You're absolutely right. And I want to underscore what you said about those who are being silent in the process. Let's be clear, silence is violence, right? Being silent makes you complicit. on these
Yep.
pieces of legislation. And there are people who try to fly under the radar while also claiming to be allies and accomplices to the LGBTQ community. If you're a lawmaker who likes to put your face on a rainbow logo and show up at Pride, but you're not willing to show up for us when we're being erased from the classroom, it might be time to rethink whether or not you're welcome at Pride. And it's incumbent upon us to hold those folks accountable and tell them you do not get to claim to be an ally of the LGBTQ community when it helps you earn a few more votes to get over the edge in an election cycle if you're going to turn around and abandon us when it comes time to fight bad bills in Tallahassee. It's our job as citizens, as constituents, to hold folks accountable. And so I'm underscoring, I am co-signing the bill with Senator Jones. We have to hold people accountable.
And Natasha, because listen, Brandon just struck a chord. Like, you know, in church, when the pastor say something good, you got to say something really quick. But let me tell you, Brandon made it clear on one issue, and that when it comes to individuals showing up for the victory, but they're not a part of the work that's being done in it. And so I think we need to make it extremely, extremely clear that the moment that we're on right now, no one who say they are ally should be sitting on the sidelines right now, because this is a full contact sport that's happening right now within the legislature. And there are some people sitting back complacent. I know some people are who are silent. They don't know what their district might say or whatever case might be. I have a new opponent right now who ran against me last cycle, and he's coming back. And you know what his reasoning was? Is because my only agenda is the gay agenda, because he saw me on the news speaking about the Don't Say Gay bill. This is the type of stuff that we're dealing with. This is why we need individuals who call themselves allies to speak out on issues like this. It's important.
I mean, I don't even know how to follow that, y'all. I mean, absolutely on everything that you're saying. I mean, I think about how, no change, can be done by just one person alone, right? It takes everybody to be a part of that team and to make something happen. So thank you so much for saying all the things that you said and for sharing your wisdom on that and encouraging folks to get involved in any way that you can, whether that's coming to Tallahassee and, giving the legislature a piece of your mind, or writing a letter, sending an email. And it's nice to hear, Senator, that, that you enjoy hearing from constituents, right? From folks that want to contact you about different things. And that's encouraging. So we're going to just take a moment real quick and see if there are any questions here in the chat. I'm going to just take a quick look. We've got some comments here. I've got some folks talking about how GSA was a huge part of their high school years and in trying to figure out who they are, because they didn't feel safe talking about their sexuality or their identity at home. And so that's significant.
Natasha, I don't want to breeze over that, because that's real for so many people, for so many LGBTQ kids who are learning who they are. There is the one space that's safe for them, right? For me, home was not safe. Church was not safe. Even the halls of school were not safe. There was the classroom that was safe, that one classroom, that one teacher that was a safe space for me. That's real for LGBTQ kids. I know that it's 2022 and it can feel like, oh, well, you have gay marriage. What else could you possibly want? But the truth is that the bigotry still remains. The animus against LGBTQ people that has always been there is what's fueling this argument around the Don't Say Gay bill in the first place. And so it's important that we underscore that those spaces, like gay straight alliances, like that classroom, like that teacher, they're worth fighting for. They're worth defending, because for some kids, they're a matter of life and death. And I heard it said earlier today at the press conference we held on the steps of the Capitol, that in many cases, it's not that that teacher is withholding information, it's that the teacher is helping that young person find the courage to tell their parents who they are, that they're on a journey together, that it's a partnership between educators, between administrators, between parents, between the students, and we're all doing what we can to help that young person be the very best version of themselves. Education's a community effort. I benefit from a highly educated society. I benefit when the next generation does better, and it's incumbent upon all of us to be willing to invest in the well-being and safety of our young people, to affirm them, to acknowledge them, to celebrate them. And that's why these spaces are worth fighting for.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's just the right thing to do, right? To treat people with humanity, dignity, and respect. Um, so that actually, I do have one more thing that I'd love to kind of pick your brains on. So as we're talking about getting involved, right, and encouraging folks to do that, I remember seeing on social media a video where some folks at the house were getting voicemails. You know what I'm talking about, Brandon? Okay, so what I'd love to know, so far in your experiences, have you gotten a response from Floridians thus far? Are you seeing a lot of people showing up in opposition to this bill?
You talking me or Brandon? Me?
You, yes, sir.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Listen, yeah, absolutely. I have even today. There were two different student groups that came in to speak in opposition of the bill. And as a matter of fact, you actually see individuals who are not coming in to advocate about the Don't Say bill or Stop the Woke bill that's moving through the legislature, who are pivoting just briefly from their talking points for what they're supposed to be talking about, and they'll say, you know what? Also, I'm also against X, Y, and Z. So this kind of, and one of the ladies today, who was a very nice lady, was a Republican who actually made clear her daughter is gay, and she does not agree with what the governor and the Republicans are doing here within the legislature. So yes, it is a huge outcry, and I have to give it to Equality Florida. I shared this with John and Joe today that the messaging that has happened around this legislation, if it wasn't for Equality Florida, and I think we all need to lift them up in this moment, if it was not for Equality Florida and the work that they're doing, we would not be this far nationally to where companies, to where the president of the United States and others are looking at this as a problem. And they know that if Florida can do it, this can be a trend that can go across the entire state of Florida. And it's dangerous on its surface, because what you begin doing is now you're pivoting an already marginalized community against what people believe is right, quote unquote. And no one still do not have the definition of right. And as a person coming from a Christian household, I continue to ask people, now, if you want to talk and you want to pull out what truth is, when you start revealing yours, then we can talk about everybody else's, right? So I believe that it puts people in a very tough position, not just within the state of Florida, but also across the country.
Yeah, and thank you. I'm glad that you're seeing the outcry, Senator. I think we all are. I mean, I was in Los Angeles 2 weeks ago at a gay bar watching a drag show, and somebody saw my ID when I showed it to the bartender. Yes, they still ID me. It's very kind of them. And when he saw my ID, he noticed I was from Florida, and the first thing out of his mouth was, "What's going on with that Don't Say Gay thing?" It's embarrassing. It's humiliating, and it should be uncomfortable for lawmakers in the building, because they have cooked up these culture war issues for nothing other than to pump up their own political ambitions, and have made Florida a laughing stock in the process. So definitely seeing people speaking out. Just to share a couple of stats with you. First of all, thank you, Senator, for the shout out. I love the messaging component. That's my job, is to help us build our message around things and tell our stories in an authentic and compelling way. And so it fills my heart with joy when that sort of catches fire and people begin telling their stories in that way. We've sent, I think, over 15,000 emails to lawmakers in the building. We've made, I want to say, a couple thousand phone calls at this point. We have 1,100 volunteers signed up to phone bank to connect pro-equality voters to their lawmaker to tell them to oppose this bill. John Harris gave testimony in one of the hearings, and it has over 3 million views on social media so far. We've seen people pack the building. We had 100 and I think 50 people lobbying in the building last week. We've got another 60 or 70 that were in the building today. We are seeing people show up. And what I love about it is that, just like any good part of the LGBTQ civil rights movement, it's become an organic opportunity for people to be unapologetic and unashamed about who they are. When we started to invite people to simply speak out against the Don't Say Gay bill, it caught fire on its own. the TikTok community. There are people with millions of followers that are all on their own asking for people to engage around this bill. The reason that you have people calling the Capitol and saying gay and hanging up is because people on TikTok said, what can we do to tie up the phone lines? So this has become a national, international, even story. And people here in Florida are speaking out unequivocally. They support LGBTQ people. They support us being celebrated and acknowledged in classrooms and workplaces. They believe that we are a healthy and beautiful part of society, and they're making their voices heard every single day. We just need to keep it up.
Absolutely. Thank you both so much. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you all so much for joining us. And thank you, Senator Shevrin Jones and Brandon Wolf, for taking the time to explain how this bill is going to impact our communities, how important it is for us to pay attention to what's happening in Tallahassee. We have a lot of work to do in Florida. Be sure to like this video, share it with your friends and your family so that they can stay up to date on what's happening in Tallahassee. Tune in next Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time for our next episode of Keeping Watch. Have a good night.